Welcome to Beyond the Wild podcast, where we go venturing beyond the gear, beyond the subject, beyond the shot. Find the heart of wildlife and adventure creative. Beyond the Wild podcast is brought to you by Pictureline.com, your online source for everything photography, and Canon USA. Listen in, we share tips and tactics learned from years of journeying into the wild. Your hosts are Jason Loftus, Ron Hayes, and myself, Mark Raycroft. Let's begin another episode of Beyond the Wild.
That was fast. Game time, gentlemen.
Game time. Fellas, it's good to be back. It's good to have the crew back together. Mark, you even have your bride back, correct?
Yes, as of last night, Billy arrived back from Australia and had a wonderful time there. And part of today's podcast might be about that continent.
Possibly.
Yeah, possibly.
One event in particular I'm interested in hearing about.
Hopefully at the end there might be a couple, but yeah, it is primarily about one highlight.
Oh man, yeah.
Anecdotes around it, but it's she flew back yesterday, uneventful, and there are flights now. I mean, the world's getting smaller, right? And you can fly from Brisbane straight to New York City now. You can, and she was telling me there's a straight from Toronto to Brisbane, but currently we've flown through LA. As anybody in the US, that would be a sensible point to pivot. And then obviously it's a direct flight from LA to Brisbane, because I mean, aside from Hawaii, where do you stop once you're up there?
How many hours is it?
From Vancouver, it's 13 and a half. It's honestly not bad. I enjoy the unplugging from things for that period of time, and one little travel pro tip. There's various seatings on planes, and for a long flight like that, the business class is prohibitive unless people are very wealthy. Obviously, it's coveted. It's so comfortable in comparison. But we've found, and there's preferred seating, and I guess that's what we have. So there's just the economy seats, and for a minor upgrade, and for us it was $155 for each flight, preferred seating. But to get the bulkhead row, gives you all that leg room. There's nobody in front putting their seat back. So
the only problem is you lose a spot for your luggage, right? Because you don't have a under the seat option.
Yes. Yeah. There's nothing there's no seat in front. So the luggage all goes above. But it's, when you booked the preferred seating, again, it's not that much more. You usually get on the plane a little bit earlier too, I think, and you have room. There hasn't been any issues with overhead luggage, and don't take a lot on that. But yeah, next time I'll be taking more of a camera bag, but it'll still be fine. But for that duration of flight, it makes a big difference just to be able to stretch out, or even you can just stand up there, right, during the flight and stretch your legs and not have to walk the aisle all the time. So that's something we do. I know that we've flown on different airlines, but Air Canada obviously, is a prevalent one here that we travel on. And I know there's been a lot of hiccups since COVID with airlines and a lot of delays, but knock on wood, I've only had one or two non-significant delays. Jason, we can have other conversations about what's happened to you recently. My goodness. So it's isn't bad at all. And I like the fact I wouldn't opt for the Toronto to Brisbane as convenient as the direct flight would be. It probably cut a little bit of time off the overall travel day, but stopping in Vancouver or LA for an hour or two and walking around really does physically break up the trip, and that helps.
Yeah, I'm just curious because I'm trying to figure out what's the longest flight. I probably could just Google it. I'm just too slow to do that. But what is the longest flight you can take? And I think right now there's one that's longer. I think it's around 16 or 17 hours, if I remember right.
Oh, no doubt. Yeah.
And I don't remember from where to where, but it's,
So speaking of 16 or 17 hours, Jason, Mark, I wasn't going to bring it up because I know it's still It's a fresh wound.
Uh-oh.
It hasn't even scabbed over yet, but
Hmm.
you should not be here today, correct?
Right. Did we talk about this last time
Did
on
we?
the last podcast? On the last podcast, I think we
We
did.
touched on it because it was a surprise when we did Jules'
Yeah.
podcast to
Yeah.
have you on. I
Right.
didn't know
That's
that was
right.
happening,
Yep.
and you showed up, and I'm like, it's fantastic to see you, but something, I know the background, something's
Right.
not right here.
Right. But you are correct, Ron. To rehash it just a little bit, and thanks for it was, you're right. It's not a scab, so you didn't even pick the scab. But yeah, I'm not technically supposed to be here. Yeah, got caught up in that whole CrowdStrike thing. Kind of a bummer, but again, I'm trying to just keep a positive attitude about it, and I'm going to go get away this weekend and run around and see if I can't find some velvety elk or something to go try to get some photos of. So
That sounds good.
yeah,
It does sound good. And you know what else sounds good is it's almost autumn.
yes. Oh boy, this heat.
It doesn't seem like it due to the temperatures, but it is almost autumn. It's right around the corner, and
Are you guys breaking records in Wyoming as far as how many days over 100 or anything like that?
no, not yet. We've had much hotter summers, but typically we get a little bit of rain in between the heat, as the storms blow through and the
Yeah.
hot and cool air, cause some storms. But this year has been really dry too, so there's a lot of fires, and which we've talked about it in the past ad nauseum. The smoke is not great, but it does provide some very unique light. So again, just like you said, missing your trip, you've gotta find a way to spin it positive. And so
Yep.
I do that with the extended golden hour. Typically in the evening, you get just that kind of orange pink light.
Yep.
Because of the filter that smoke in the atmosphere creates.
Yeah, and there are a lot of fires going right now. And our valley here in Utah, we live in that bowl, right? So in the valley here, it's just we got tons of smoke right now, and it's just terrible. Walk outside and you can't hardly see. It's just
Oh, wow.
and on top of that, the smog's building because we haven't had any storms like you mentioned, and it's just been record number of days over 100 degrees in Utah here. It's been crazy. I was really looking forward to go to Africa to get away from the heat, to be quite honest.
That seems counterintuitive, but
It
yeah,
does,
I
but
get
it
it.
is their winter over there, and so it's in
Yeah.
the low 70s to 80s, which is nice. So, anyways, it's enough of me.
Mark, speaking of winter, you were in the southern hemisphere for their winter as well, correct?
And yeah, and Jason, I want to hear more from. I look forward to always hearing more from you. So don't ever feel that way, brother. The longest flight I looked it up currently, according to Google, is from JFK in New York City to Singapore, 18 hours and 50 minutes. 18 or almost 19 hours.
Almost 19 hours.
You could probably grab a first class seat on that flight for about 25 grand, right?
Yeah, well, there you go. Right, that's the thing. It's like yeah. I mean, a normal flight to Australia from Toronto is around 3,000, maybe a little less, and to go first class, you're more than double that. And honestly, the bulkhead works. And there were a couple of different rows. I like to have the side because in the aisle, the shoulder sticks out and you try to sleep in, the cart. There were people knock me and stuff like that. But in the middle, well, how much fun is that? But with the bulkhead, there's these bigger jets. There's different bulkhead rows further down the jet, and they all have the same preferred seating. But on something I learned on this flight was on row like 32, same seating as 18. The window seat is like built for a kid. For some reason, that exit row slants in, and it's like crawling into this little cubby hole of a seat. I had no idea. I made it through. That was a return flight, but that's live and learn. So the bulkheads aren't all the same. And I noticed booking a flight today too, thankfully. As you click on seats now to reserve a seat, it'll say windowless, or, I mean, there's some things to look out for.
Yeah.
Quick, also, something happened yesterday. Pro tip that's come up before, travel pro tip. This time of year, especially with autumn trips coming up, car rentals, they're already starting to go down in price. So, I mean, I always try to reserve a long way out, but have free cancellation. And I was able to get a larger car or larger SUV for less to accommodate people on an upcoming trip yesterday. So it's something to keep watching that. Check it, every couple of weeks. And even sometimes I notice a big time when that transitions is after Labor Day weekend too. I've noticed.
Yeah.
So keep an eye on your car rentals, because there could be better options out there as long as you have the free cancellation. It's very easy to switch. And say last year I had one trip that was 3 weeks long. The car rental initially was $2,500, and it ended up being, I think, $13. So just by revisiting it, made a big difference. Should I talk about insurance?
Oh yeah, no kidding. You can bring that up again, right? Yeah. I thought you were going to say that one cost you $13,000 because of the.
Oh, I just settled that a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
So
Oh, that's crazy.
I was lucky. So it was a Kia Sportage that I had rented, and this is the story that listeners will know. Last year in Colorado, and it disappeared on my second night at the hotel. And when I went to the police station a few days later and talked to the officers there, they're like, "What kind of vehicle was it?" And I said it was a Kia Sportage, and they said, "Oh, well, we'll probably find it, because as young people grab those. If it was something like a Ford Raptor, they said it would be already in Mexico." So I was like, okay, well, no, I didn't rent one of those. And so they found it 5 days later, but it was damaged. And I had insurance through my credit card, and going through that, and it did work out. But I was, there's no declaration for months that it was what the damage extent was, right? And you think of a car being stolen by young people, punks doing this, they're going to damage it just for giggles, right? So, and it was up to like $22,000. And again, I had the insurance, but it was trying to get through to that. And well, there was a hiccup. So in December, I contacted the rental car company, and they confirmed that the car had been recovered. I already had the police report. I had asked for that online, easy to do, that it had been recovered but damaged. And I asked the lady at the rental car company, "So are we good? Is this done?" And she said, "Yes, we're done. It's good. It's been returned. Everything's looked after." Because with the insurance on the credit card, and I don't know about other insurances, there's a limited amount of time that you have after opening a claim to finishing the claim. I think it was 90 days. And because I was told, I mean, I should have looked further. It's partly my fault, I guess. But I was told that everything was fine. I let it go beyond the 90 days. And then it was like May, I got a letter from the rental car company saying, "You owe us this money for the car." And I'm like, uh-oh, because I'm beyond the 90 days. But so I'm opening the envelope. There's all kinds of things in life we open with tremendous anticipation. So I'm opening this, and I'm very nervous, and I'm like, this could be really bad. And it was $920 damage. So my first response was, thank God. That's what it was. Then I contacted, and the rental car company was really understanding. I said, I'm going to try. And they actually said that the insurance company should be forgiving, because you had been told wrongfully that it was fine, and the claim was closed, and it wasn't. And they did. They honored it. So the rental car company, as of a few weeks ago, paid a little over $600 of it, but wouldn't pay the whole amount because the insurance company paid that. The rental car company devalued the car. And here's the thing. There's only $500 damage. The ignition had been damaged somehow, which is weird.
Stuck a screwdriver in it, and off they went. Right.
So yeah, that had to be it. You would know from your enforcement background, right? How easy, by the way. Or review days. Nice.
Before that, I mean, you got to get that experience somewhere.
So the other part was just, it was only $500, but it was all their fees for time and processing that made it $900. And then they wrote the car down, devalued it by $300, and that's what the insurance wouldn't cover. And so I had to pay that, but it's done. In July, end of July, it was finished. And yeah, anyway, it changed my perspective. I mean, I've been renting cars for 30 years or more. Well, maybe 13. I don't know, not that old, but that's, I'm a little more cautious with that stuff now. But so I've been back for
Hey, Mark.
2 weeks. Yes, sir.
Sorry to cut you off, but before you get into that,
Yes.
I just wanted to say Jason is heading to our sponsor, Picture Line Camera, tomorrow. And I can say this on today's podcast because this will come out later. But he's going to get his hands on some brand new technology that every Canon user has been waiting on for quite some time.
Yep.
And get to put your fingers on a R5 II and probably an R1. Let's be honest.
Yeah, I'll definitely look at
it. Whether you say you're going to get one or not, you're going to get to put your hands on it tomorrow.
That's right. I won't get to take it home, but I'll get to touch it, play with it, take some photos with it, learn more about what's so much better about it, all that good stuff. So looking forward to it.
So we want to make sure that everyone knows that Colin is going to have a stack of R5 Mark IIs that he needs to get rid of. So make sure you give Picture Line a call. And
if you're not on the list,
your source for everything. Get on the list.
Get on the list. Yes.
Yeah.
That's the moral of that story. Call Colin. Get on the
wild. That'll help. Right?
Yeah.
Absolutely. No, it's a good point. Mention that you heard it from us. But,
and Canon has already sent out the "I'm sorry, we didn't make enough to meet demand"
I hadn't
email. So
what was that? I saw a YouTube thumbnail on it, but hadn't watched it yet. Okay.
Yeah. It's to the point now where every manufacturer does it as soon as they release something. I mean, Nikon did it, Sony does it, Canon's doing it. We're sorry, we can't keep up with demand.
So I didn't know this was coming up in today's conversation, or I would have paused too there. And what are your plans, guys? What are you guys doing?
R5 II.
Same. I don't see a need, honestly, for an R1 for what I do. That is very much a very specialized camera for sports guys, honestly. It's
professional
really
sports guys or professional media type.
Right.
Just
the R5 II does everything the R1 does and has a bigger sensor and, so it's...
Except for the focus system, because the R5 II has a cross type, but the R1 has quad. So it is doing horizontal and vertical and matching those points. So the amount of finite focus increases. It's got the same processing power, and it's the first time a 5 series camera has had the same processing power that a 1 series camera has had. But the R1 with the lower resolution sensor is going to be a little bit faster. Plus, it's got the quad pixel cross type. I don't know exactly how it works yet. I need to do a little bit more research, but it is going to be a little bit faster and more finite focus system. But yeah, as Jason was saying, the R5 II is, for what we do, it's definitely the go-to video spec wise and still spec wise. So
this could be a podcast. I had a friend call me this week or last week and asked me about the specs. He has an R5 and was contemplating ordering the Mark II. Do you guys, off the top of your head at this point in time, know the highlights, the points that would be significantly different and improved between those two bodies?
Ron could probably speak to it better than I can. I have an idea, but Ron is definitely the tech guy when it comes to this stuff. So,
well, it's got the backside illuminated stack sensor, so it's going to be much better, even though it's a higher resolution camera with the 45 megapixel, and they did stay with 45. They didn't increase it. So even though it's a higher resolution sensor with the backside illuminated and the stacked sensor, it's going to do much better in low light. That's going to be big. The other thing is it'll have the pre-record for stills, which is critical. Every time, if you hold the lens down, if you have the pre-record turned on and you hold your shutter release halfway down, it's focusing, but it's also pre-recording those images. So every time you're going to get 15 images if you have it set on high speed, because it's taken a half a second worth of images. So that's going to be huge, especially, maybe not for the large mammal photographers like we tend to do, but for bird photographers, that's going to be a giant leap forward and advantage, because, a bird takes off, you miss it. You might get them 3 feet from the limb, but now you're going to get them all throughout that takeoff sequence. And you'll get 15 images every time if your shutter speed is fast enough. Now, where for me, the biggest difference maker, aside from the backside illuminated stack sensor that we've already talked about, is the fact that video, Red has always had the advantage of having that pre-record function. And so now for video, especially for a wildlife guy, because with the R5, even though you had the autofocus, you still had to be recording to catch something happen. Now you've got a 3 to 5 second pre-record on video as well. And that's going to be huge. It's going to save so much space on memory cards, and so much time, later on when you're doing your editing, trying to get through and find those sequences that you want to put in your final edit, because you can wait for something to happen, literally wait for something to happen, and then hit your record button and you got it. So that's the advantage that Red always had. We saw a shorter pre-record in the C70, which was a Canon R-mount cinema camera. We don't have neutral density filters, but I would never expect that in a stills camera. They just came out with that C400, which is a tremendous addition to their cinema lineup. And I think that's probably the replacement to the C70, basically. But I think that pre-record is going to be huge for what we do. Doing the YouTube type videos and that kind of thing. It's not, it's probably still not considered a cinema camera. However, it is Netflix approved and approved for some of those different networks. So it is usable. And the footage is going to be much better with those cross-type autofocus. It's going to be better for video and stills. Those are
it's a whole new focus system, right?
Yeah,
right.
Brand new. Yep.
And then the other thing I think that you may have touched on, but I don't know, the sensor is all a brand new sensor too, right? It's not the same sensor that was in the R5.1.
That's right. Yep.
It's a brand new sensor. So there's a lot of differences. I know it's not just the megapixel. The megapixels aren't, and there's a lot of guys that were really hoping that those megapixels were going to, increase, but there's a lot of other things that are there that I think it'll make this camera a whole nother level, even though it doesn't look like it on paper necessarily.
Yep. If you just look at the specs and don't dig into it, you're right. It doesn't look like a big leap forward, but it's huge.
Yeah.
In my opinion. Exciting.
Yeah. I mean, I'm excited regardless. It's a new camera and it's been like 5 or 6 years, right? So
thank you, Canon.
Yeah. You guys know how to build the hype. There's no question.
And if you don't, that guy from Canada does, because he's been talking about it for 2 years.
Yes.
Not this guy.
No, not Mark. Yeah.
Clarification. Not that I wouldn't. I mean, I had great experience with the R5.
Yeah.
No complaints at all. So that's very exciting. When do you guys have dates? I mean, about this camera. When you get
August 20th?
20th. Yeah. It's my daughter's birthday, so it's a happy birthday present to me from my daughter on her birthday.
That's fantastic.
Just in time for Elkrat.
Sure.
Yes, exactly.
Very cool. Awesome.
So, all right, Mark.
Can I tag on one more
yeah.
tip? Sorry, with the plane, because it fits in with this for sure. One of my tricks, Mark, and I don't know if you do this or Ron, either one of you, but and I don't really tell a lot of people this. I guess I'm telling the world now because I don't want people to figure it out and do it. But
Oh, you better
if you
stop.
have stats at all with an airline, and I do because I fly for work quite a bit, my day job, right? The trick I have is with Delta anyways, I get on and I book, and then I just whatever seat they give me. Then I can go into the app right after I book and I can choose my seat within reason. And I almost always the exit row's got openings. And that exit row is like a free economy row. You get the extra leg room, you get more leg room than even Comfort or Comfort Plus or whatever. You won't get as much leg room as the bulkhead, obviously, but you do get that extra leg room, and you can still put your bag underneath the seat in front of you and stretch your legs out. And that's just a little travel hack that I use whenever I can. But so something to consider and look for, and it might even be cheaper to upgrade to the exit row than it would be to pay for the Comfort seat. The Comfort gives you the extra drinks and snacks and all that. You don't get that at the exit row, but I don't care about that, so I just go with the exit row.
You know what? Before Mark starts, the last travel hack is?
What's that?
If you're my height, you can stretch your legs out in the back of the plane. It doesn't matter.
Your feet don't even touch the floor.
I know, you can swing them back and forth.
You just swing them and
you don't even kick the seat in front of you.
Oh, that's not fair. And that's not fun.
Yeah. I can't laugh at that.
Yes,
you did, though. It was off camera, but you did. All right, Mark, you just got back.
Denied. Yeah, the exit row, like the bulkhead. Yeah, definitely. And I think I could be wrong though. Maybe I shouldn't. I think that some airlines charge.
Yeah, they do. They look at it as a preferred seat, and they'll charge you an upcharge for it if you don't have status. But yeah,
right. And there's incentive for that too. I mean, flying with an airline over and over gives you some status for various little perks. So
right,
keep that in mind. Quickly, I wanted to. I mean, Australia's amazing. Before talking about it, we have merch coming, and I thank Mr. Ron Hayes for looking after the team with t-shirts and hats and piles of stickers that if you see us in the field this fall, be happy to give out. And yeah, they're all fantastic.
Or if you get your R5 or R1 from Pictureline, they'll send you some stickers as well.
Yeah. So pictureline.com, very easy to find, and just ask for Colin if you phone them or email in that way. Phoning's probably better though. I don't know, guys, if you recommend that. Okay.
Yeah.
I look forward to hearing how it goes there tomorrow, Jason, as well. That sounds like fun. But the merch stuff, our producer Jason Griffiths will, in due course. This stuff is all evolving with the new show, and we'll get that up on the website. And I mean, we've talked about Patreon before. We're on the cusp of that. And there could be some merch coming with one of the subscriptions with Patreon, but there'll also be a merch part on our website at beyondthewildpodcast.com as well for anybody interested in some very attractive outdoors swag. So yeah, in Australia, it's, first of all, just got to say, highly recommended. I know it's a long way. Some people are fine with that. Others have aversions to traveling that far, but it's worth it because it just broadens perspective so much. It's such a different part of this planet, but the people are wonderful. The city, Brisbane is amazing, clean. It's a super cool city with the river running through it, and there are water taxis that take you side to side so efficiently, catamarans. It's an hour from the Gold Coast to the south, and Sunshine Coast to the north, which are some of the most beautiful beaches on the planet. And it's just the bird life and the sea life, the marine life out there. It's just, there's so much that just unfolds in front of you. I love how people joke. Yes, there are things that want to kill you there, but I haven't seen any. And it's not something that, I don't worry about that. It's in Spiders can be big, but they're not all venomous. And we did have a cool experience in the backyard. So our daughter lives there, and we go to see her and have excursions to learn more about Australia. It's my third time there. The first trip we did the Great Barrier Reef, snorkeled there, and did a sea turtle experience. Both of those were mind blowing, especially the Great Barrier Reef. Very accessible, very concerned about that ecosystem, but really tremendously moving with the diversity of life, snorkeling there for the day. But on this trip, one of the fun surprises was a blue-tongued lizard right in the backyard. And the things that I mentioned about Australia, I have photos and videos of that. Jason, our producer, will get on the YouTube portion of the show, so you'll get to see some of these interesting birds and animals or reptiles. And so, yeah, blue-tongued lizard, and there's just this, it's like this long tube of a scaled prehistoric looking lizard. And I was home by myself, and I walked out, and it's just like, wow, what are you? And took my phone out, of course, and filmed it, and it moved along. And apparently, they're not venomous, and they're very common actually too, but very, different than what we see here. And that's one of the things.
Hold on. You're a biologist, Mark. I'm disappointed.
Thanks a lot. What for?
All spiders are venomous. It's part of the family, just not all are harmful.
Okay, so venomous as far as killing their prey, as paralyzing their prey with, right?
Yep.
All right, that's what
but not all are harmful to humans, but all are venomous. Yep.
There you go. See, I mean, there's a reason there are 3 of us on this show. And, my degree in wildlife biology, I graduated in 1995. So some of it's a bit cobwebby, some of it.
Spiderwebby?
Spiderwebby, yeah, sorry. But yeah, that makes sense. They do, they inject into their prey, and the prey is paralyzed, and then they wrap it in a web. And then you want to go there, you want to be biological.
And then they just suck it down like a straw.
Yeah, the insides of their prey, melts inside, and they suck it down. It's great. All right, we got
just like when I broke my jaw, same exact thing.
Whoa, yeah, right. Everybody appreciates a good blender,
right?
I had a period of time where I had to eat through a straw too, and it wasn't when I was a baby. And I even put I had like a steak dinner. I just dropped it all in the blender. All the nutrition was there. It worked.
Did it?
But yeah, that sidebar with the spiders, honestly, didn't see many. It's such a clean and wonderful area, and I'm sure if people get in hiking the outback, and we hike various places, anyway, it was all amazing. The bird life, and I know I've talked about this in other podcasts, it just is so different. And so the kind of the humor with it, my son and I were, talking and joking about this kind of thing. It's like going through a portal to a different, it's not a different universe, but there's so many differences, but there's so much that's similar there. It's still planet Earth. There's still wonderful people, but it's like being in a different module in a video game, in a sense, right? Because things are called different names for things driving on the other side of the road, which is common around different parts of the planet. But it's just that the natural history is so different than what we have in North America. It just feels, it just takes adjusting to in a good way. There's so much bird life. And so, yes, like this other module, like the Toyota Highlander is called a Kluger. I mean, it's like it's just evolved into different names. And in the grocery store, I noticed a sign. I have pictures of this stuff too, so you'll see the proof if you watch on YouTube. The yogurt in the refrigerator section sign for yogurts, and I wasn't even looking for yogurt, but the sign caught my attention. I looked up, and it was spelled YOGHURT. I'm like, why does yogurt hurt? But again, as the best people, that as nice as anywhere I've been on the planet, I highly encourage people to explore Australia, and the natural history is a big reason. And so it was winter, which isn't I mean, there's a lot of variance between the top and bottom of Australia, but it's not like what we anticipate here for winter, and especially in Canada. It's more like our September or early October. So it's very comfortable. It's what I love, the daytime. And I'm going to have to, I should have looked this up for Fahrenheit. The lows, are 10 or 12 degrees Celsius and 20 degrees at daytime high. Can you guys compute that, or should I grab it?
It's about 50, I think, during the daytime.
20 to be 50?
I think so.
Bear with us. We'll get to it.
Because 40's 100, right?
20 is 68.
Oh, so it's not, you can't just half it.
No, and so it's quite comfortable. And whereas Pilly, my wife who just came back, she'll go in our winter, their summer, and she's like, Mark, you don't want to do it because I'm not a hot weather, intense humidity kind of person, and it's very much that way there in their summertime. So the winter is a fantastic, comfortable time to be there, and it's I know the bird life. I mean, it's just as I find it incredibly vibrant there in the winter. But I know when Pilly was there in their summer, with all the nesting birds, there's so much more going on. So if you're a total birder and into bird photography, you might want to look at the seasonality for preferences that way. But there's so much, like even in the city parks, there are laughing kookaburras. There are all kinds of parrots. There are galahs, which are these really vibrant parrot birds that are in the parks. There's cool things that look like dinosaurs called brush turkeys, and these are protected birds that kind of look like a wild turkey but have a very different and colorful head, and they basically root around and pick up things in parks. And I saw another very interesting bird that I could pass for an alien, perhaps, is a white ibis there, which is what they nickname a bin chicken, which are just all over the place. I mean, not in mass numbers, but it's like you can walk down the street or walk in a park and there's one walking along, picking up, eating anything, kind of like gulls do in a sense, but have a very prehistoric looking bare head. And David Attenborough, I think you can look it up on YouTube, did a short special on them, which was very interesting, about how they survive in urban areas. It's worth watching and looking up. Very cool birds as far as their life cycle, but there's so many colorful birds as well. And we spent 2 days. We rented a cabin, very nice, along the Gold Coast, and really not that expensive either. And rainbow lorikeets are super colorful bird that look like somebody's taken a paintbrush, and just vibrant colors of green and red. And I had a lot of fun and doing a lot just on this trip, because a lot of it was family focused with the iPhone and the new iPhone magnification and working with that. And so you can see some of the video. There was a pair of rainbow lorikeets that were flirting with each other. That was fun. And then there was one friendly one that joined us for lunch one day and kind of sat at the edge of the seats where we were at, which was fun to be up close. It's again, brilliant, colorful. It's kind of, I mean, we have some colorful birds definitely in North America, but you'll see in the pictures. It's another thing, I'll get to the key experience in one moment. Was really cool. We thought it was possums, which look different there than what we consider possums here, that we were hearing every night. And it turned out, we figured out by the end of the trip that they were flying foxes, because we go out in the backyard in the evening and they're literally, you'd see like 15 flying foxes in about 15 or 20 minutes, and right at dark. So you see their silhouettes flying over, they're impressive for size. And they land in a tree that were 2 doors down, and then they talk all night, like they sound like gremlins. And I've got an audio of this stuff too. It's just, they were all night long.
They kind of look like gremlins, to be honest.
It could be, right? There's one thing I didn't get pictures of, but yeah, true enough. But just to see, it's like being in I mean, for me, it was like looking at like being in a movie or a Jurassic Park to see the size of this like mini pterodactyl flying around in the backyard, these webbed wings. So very cool. So the highlight for as far as photography and wildlife and video of this trip was a day, actually just pretty well a morning we spent out with humpback whales. And it's something on a future trip, I'm going to try to do 2 or 3 times with different equipment. And in Australia, you can get in the water with the whales. And it's, it was way beyond my expectations. So we went out in this, it was a reinforced Zodiac. It had a roof on it. It fit 10 guests, and the skipper and his wife were on it. And he was an excellent driver, skipper of this boat going out to the sea. It was a calm day, but there were some waves going out. That was fun through the channel. And then you get out there, and again, this is my first time doing this. I was, told we could get in with the whales, and so I'm not sure what to expect. Are the whales hanging out, and you hop in, and they're pretty chill? But it soon, and there may be times like that. This trip, what it was is we would find whales and get in position ahead of them and hop in the water. And there was probably 6 or 7 times over the course of the morning that people could get into the water. The water wasn't that cold, but most people had wetsuits on that they'd either brought or rented for that occasion, and most people had GoPros. There was one more serious photographer, an R5 in housing for underwater, and that's what I'd like to have an underwater setup for next time for that. Pilly and our daughter Martha both had wetsuits on and were jumping in the water. I didn't, because there was so much to do. I had planned on it. I didn't have a wetsuit, but I was just going to go in. But there's so much happening above the surface as well, and the time went by too quickly. So that's one of my wish lists on a future trip, is just to kind of focus an outing in the water with them as well. But they were migrating through, and it was their mating season at this point. And there was a lot of activity. We probably saw 45 whales in that morning, and I'm not saying all were boat side. Some might have been 300 or 400 yards away, but they were just moving. And sometimes there'd be 6 or 7 whales together, and obviously some friskiness with, I assume, the males and the females. And it seemed that way when whales that we were with, if it was a tandem pair going that way. There was a baby born the week before. We didn't see that one. But the proximity, I mean, when we started out, we maybe got a few miles from shore, and in the video I posted on Instagram and what we'll have on YouTube here, one just breached not far from the boat. And it was like, wow, game on. It
wasn't just a breach. I mean, it was like full, almost all the way out of the water. Those things are, 35 tons or something like that. And it launched itself almost clean out of the water. It was unbelievable.
Yeah. They were, I have the weight on the video.
And you got the whole thing.
They can be in excess of 50,000 pounds.
Yeah. That's crazy.
So the force that they break the surface with, and that's the challenge of photographing it or filming them. We saw 35 or probably over 40 breaches in those few hours. And again, just like the whale sightings, not all were right boat side. We saw 3 whales breached at the same time, but like 400 yards away. And it was just could you imagine that if that had happened? We'd saw tandem breaches 3 or 4 times, but not near the boat. But they were breaching, and what was it's so this is probably why I didn't have time to get in the water, because it's just activity all around, and I'm filming, and I pick based on where we'd seen whales coming along beside the boat in that direction. And I also was trying to pick the light I wanted. We could see the shore off in the horizon from us. Just personal preference. I didn't want to film that way with seeing
Mhm.
buildings in the background and skyscrapers. I'd rather film out to sea, so it's more natural. So, and the light was a little more backlit that way. So I was pointed in that direction, but you just basically have to film nonstop. And because there were breaches where I'd pivot, it'd start to breach and you'd jerk the camera and try to get it, and you get part of a airborne whale. So there's that, you're focused and filming for minutes, and then you hear behind people say, "Oh, wow." And you turn around and just see the splash as the whale lands, 50 yards on that side of the boat. Say, "Oh, missed it." But I think I filmed 4 breaches that I was able to get. And then there was ones that had their flukes. They'd come along the side of the boat and they'd be slapping their flukes. And another thing that was really emanated the power of these humpback whales and their size was just off the side of the boat or the back when people were in with snorkeling, and the whales came up and they'd rise and they'd dive, and in perspective you'd see them compared to the human floating in the foreground, and to me really resonated their size and power, and also the fact, I was thinking and reflecting on this. When you think of large mammals, if you think of a moose or a bison and rut, they're doing their thing. They're so big, they're belligerent. Whereas these whales obviously, have a lot of intelligence. They're not knocking the boat, they're not knocking the people, but yet they're still engaged in all this activity, this socializing, and breaching, and they're not. There was something this week, a boat on eastern Canada
I saw
got
that. Yeah.
hit by a humpback breaching, but I think it's a really a rare occurrence given how many boats are out in these waters and stuff at different times. There's nobody near us. We could see some boats on the horizon doing similar things, um, but yeah, it was surreal. And there was one that I was able to film that came out to the point where its tail was just kind of tipping in the water when it went over, and then the spray. It's for anybody who has a chance to go whale watching, whether it's in North America or if they're in Australia, it's not an expensive outing compared to other things, and it's tremendously moving to see the power of these animals. And
Yeah,
I
that was
described them
crazy. I was so jealous
all
when I
the
saw that,
time.
but I was so glad you caught it. I've been whale watching several times, and it's just as you described, there's about 360 degrees, so there's a 320-degree chance that you're looking the wrong direction or filming the wrong direction.
It feels like it's more like a 640% chance you're looking
Right.
the wrong direction.
Yeah, exactly. It's just all about the timing, and that one was so perfect. And the thing that was perfect is you weren't whipping around to catch it. You were on the spot and just got the whole thing. It was for those of you watching on YouTube, you'll know just exactly what I'm talking about.
Well,
Yeah.
and yeah, I know, Mark, have you been whale watching before? Have you tried to
Uh,
photograph whales before?
well,
In Alaska.
with Ron in the
No.
Kenai Peninsula, we had 3 marvelous days on the water with all kinds of marine and terrestrial life, and
Right.
glaciers calving, and we had uh, close encounters with orca that I'll never forget. But
Sure.
everything was subsurface, right? It's
Right.
just dorsal fins and tail
Right.
cresting. We had fin whales, but again, they were under the surface. And in Alaska, you're not permitted to jump in the water with them, I don't believe. So that
Yeah,
wasn't on the.
I guess my point was just that I've been many times like Ron and trying to photograph them, like in Hawaii,
Mm.
when they're up there for their calving season and all that kind of fun stuff. And so, and there's a lot of whales around. And I've been on multiple excursions to try to photograph whales. And my experience is for you to get 4 breaches that were clean in one trip. That's insane. That's
Yeah,
incredible.
it was
Yeah.
crazy.
There were so many breaches. But we watched one group of 6 or 7 whales off hundreds of yards, and it's just like breach, breach, breach. And
Yeah.
it's like, yeah. But it's one of those, it's the skipper smartly. You can't just keep chasing, right?
Mhm.
And sorry, that's the wrong word, because none of this was in pursuit of whales. It was very respectful. but it's like anything. If you're with a subject, you know, you can leave it and go to another subject because it looks more appealing, and sometimes it works out. But the subject you left could do something, right? Yeah, they're very careful with marine mammals, and the whales were always approaching the boat. It was never a pursuit thing. It was more going out and seeing them and being in proximity. But it's tempting, right? As guests, when you see that kind of activity, you know, half a mile off in that direction, you want to get there and do that. And he didn't necessarily have that knee-jerk response because you'd be zagging all over the place. We stayed with a group of whales as they moved along, and then we'd switch over to other ones, and then we ended up crossing probably a mile or so to another group, and yeah, that was it. But it was very active, which was super exciting, nonstop. What a thrill. And yeah, it's greedy to think I want to do it again, right? But I'd love to do it with different cameras, and I did everything with a smartphone on that. I took a GoPro as well, but yeah, I will. But it's interesting. I did some stuff on this trip. A quick side note with this shooting raw on the smartphone, and it's kind of scary. It's not too far off. You know, they come out. You know, it's I think a 24 megabyte file, and
that's crazy.
Yeah, and if you treat it with something like a denoise, the file size isn't as big as a 45 megapixel sensor, but it's like dimension wise, I think it was, I can get the specifics for a future episode. It was like 2/3 the size. So, and yeah, so I did
Mark,
that with
did you do that through an app or did you do that just through phone settings?
phone settings. Just on the top, when you go in your camera, it says raw, and you touch it at the top and it can shoot in raw. So instead of it being a 2 megabyte image, it becomes much more.
You can do that through Lightroom on your phone and stuff too. And then it's right there in your Lightroom library on your phone. You can edit it and all kinds of stuff on there. It's pretty crazy.
But you have to shoot it in that format though, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, you shoot it from the app.
Yeah. You take the photo from Lightroom and it creates that raw image for you that you can just edit right there on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
I'm confused. Sorry. If you're capturing the image on the phone and if you don't hit the raw mode, you have a much smaller traditional file size. But if you hit the raw mode, it upsizes it, right?
Right. Or you can if you have Lightroom app on your phone, you can open the app and take a photo.
I see what you mean.
Through Lightroom, and it'll create that same raw image right through Lightroom.
Okay. Yeah. Oh, cool. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh,
you can adjust your aperture, and you can make a lot of different adjustments through Lightroom that you don't have the option to make on your phone. But I don't know that it would make a lot of difference because you can do that in post a little bit. But
sure.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, they're coming along. It was fun to play with those different, but I didn't know that Lightroom.
It's
well, for B-roll and trip stuff, and you know, it's so versatile and useful. But yeah, I looked at them at 100% on my editing screen, and they're not obviously what I get with my mirrorless cameras, but it was surprising, you know, for what they are, for the size of the lenses and stuff. So for a lot of applications, pretty darn amazing. But yeah, so so there was I put a reel together, but we'll put some stuff on YouTube. And I described a story on our last episode that it was really moving. And I only mention it because on every outing we go on, we see things we can't photograph, right? It just doesn't happen for any number of reasons. But there was one whale that came up to the back of the boat and just powered through the water. And its whole head was out and the water just parted. And I wish so much I was able to get that image, but it didn't happen. But I'm grateful, very grateful for the memory.
And you said again, you weren't using your cameras at all. You were just using your phone or in your GoPro.
Yeah, I did everything with my phone.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and this isn't a brand I mean, there's different brands that have great cameras, but I mean, every 3 or 4 years I update my phone, just like with our serious, mirrorless or DSLR to mirrorless. Once it's worthwhile to change. So yeah, the iPhone 15 Pro Max is pretty amazing with what it does.
Yep.
I have friends with Samsung phones that shoot impressive things too, and it's not my go-to, but it's an easy way to do storytelling and for this kind of stuff. For YouTube, it's totally fine. So I would have rather have done it on my mirrorless camera, and I
Sure.
will next time. But I'm really impressed with what came out of it, and just the editing capabilities, what I can do in post with it too, both video and stills. So, yeah. So yeah, it's people that have been to Australia and New Zealand that I know have loved those destinations for all kinds of reasons. And again, I know it's a long way away, and traditionally that deterred people, but it's getting easier to fly there, and it's compared to other. I mean, it's not terribly expensive. The Australian currency is slightly less than Canada, which makes it even more beneficial to the U.S. I think it's another 5%, 5 cents or so on the dollar. So, but things are a little more expensive there too. It's interesting. Their minimum wage is far more than ours, and something I seem to notice generally is the way of life is more relaxed. People don't stress as much about money and work, and run the clock around for just work. They have time for socializing, and it's just it's welcoming and inviting that way. Wonderful people.
How were the reptiles? You mentioned just a couple, but were there lots of different reptiles? And
I
see
think if
some-
you went looking,
yeah.
you would find them.
Right.
I only saw small lizards running around the house and outside in the backyard. Didn't see any inside. And then the blue tongue was impressive. Uh, but they're in Brisbane. There's a museum of natural history, which we were there only a few days into the trip, which was really cool to see the variety of everything. But reptiles, marine mammals. But one thing that was super cool was just the butterflies and insects. Just tremendous. And I have images of this from the museum that will pop up on here too. Just iridescent, beautiful varieties that we don't see here. Bird life, of course. Yeah, if you're into bird photography or are a birder, it'd be an amazing place to experience and have fun. And even in the parks, I have full frame images of kookaburras, and I've got great audio. So I'll see if we can fit that in somewhere
That'd be
too.
cool too. Yeah.
Yeah, just in the
Could use
park.
that at the beginning. Yeah, kick this baby off.
That's great. Yeah. So you've already heard it, everybody. Yeah, if we played it at the beginning, that'd be good. But yeah, it was full frame. It was just I flew over and landed on a limb like 10 feet from me. So very cool.
I have to be down there at some point. My wife loves the beaches, and I think I'd have fun playing with the birds and the reptiles for sure. So, and the
Well,
whale
let's
watching
coordinate
sounds
something.
incredible. So, yeah,
Coordinate it. Come when I'm there, and let's go out and
that'd be fun.
my daughter and her partner do scuba now. It's something obviously. I mean, living there, fantastic hobby to get into. So they know this charter operator personally. That's how they set it up and stuff
Oh,
too.
nice.
Yeah. So yeah, that'd be awesome to share it with you guys.
That'd be a fun trip to do. I love New Zealand, and I was there when I was younger, so I didn't. There was a lot of things that I didn't get to do, but I just loved it. Loved the people. Loved every aspect of it, and from what I've seen and the people from Australia that I've had the pleasure of meeting, everybody's just fun to be around. Just they're more like Wyoming people than going anywhere else that I've ever met.
Nice.
Just fun, enjoy it, adventurous. Not don't let anything hold them back. Just go. So I'd love to get down there.
Yeah, it's yeah, the food, the wine, the people. It's all great. The jet lag is real. So,
That's a fact.
and you don't think it is. At least I can at times try to fool myself. But why I mention it is if you're going to do this trip, you know, you can't
Give yourself
bank.
time.
Yeah, you can't bank on the first week there being productive. You will be able to do things every day, but your days, I mean, my days don't last full duration for the first week. So by going for 3 weeks, or 2 would be fine too. But for 3 weeks, you know, it really helps to transition our bodies. It's just so much change. And flying back's the same way. So yeah, we were talking about it this morning because it was, I mean, Billy's done this trip a bunch of times, but every time, you know, it just feels new. And we wake up early and it's like so much energy and you just go get so much done for like 6 hours. And then it's like this slow motion wall.
Yeah.
So for like a week, proves a little bit each day, but it's real. So if you're planning a trip to Australia or New Zealand, you know, give yourself lots of time because that first week is gonna, you need to let your body physiologically adjust to the different daylight. So fast, right? I mean, used to take a ship around the world, we'd be fine by the time we get there. But to fly there, I left Brisbane at 10 a.m. on Monday morning, flew to Vancouver. I left Vancouver on a flight at 10 a.m. Monday morning, same day, and landed in Toronto at 4 p.m. But it just felt so surreal. Wait, it's still 10 a.m. Monday morning, but I just crossed the Pacific, right? It's fun stuff. But yeah, be prepared for jet lag and accommodate that into your trip duration.
Awesome.
Yeah, so much fun. Yeah. So should we do where are we at for time? Should we do we're at an hour. Do we do any questions?
I think let's hold them.
We're gonna hold them?
Let's hold them for the next one. I think
we
we had
a question and answer episode with pro tips.
Yeah, we had a good discussion about the cameras, and I think that's what ate up a lot of time.
Yeah,
but
and
you know,
timely
getting that information out, pointing everybody to Picture Line, and getting ready for the big sales extravaganza that's about to take place.
Yep. Another little side note, Ron, and I wouldn't have known this if you wouldn't have told me. The R5 II, and this is good for people to know, and this will probably be too late by the time this gets out. But if you don't know, the R5 II takes a different battery grip and different batteries. So you need to order that at the same time, or you probably won't get them right away. So a little side note, hopefully, again, this is probably too late, so it's all for naught. But if you want a battery grip and that extra battery, you need to order it as soon as possible. So
yeah, and all that functionality that we talked about, not all of it, but some of it is dependent upon having the new batteries. The old batteries will work, but some of that functionality is dependent upon having that little bit of extra juice. And the EP6L, I can't remember the full battery name, but just make sure you ask them. And doing video, I eat batteries up, so I ordered a couple of extras. Your charger will work for the same one, but there's a couple of those functions that won't work.
Good advice. I look forward to hearing your thoughts on them once you have them in hand.
I look forward to having some thoughts on it when I get it in my hand.
Soon. All right, we'll hold off on. We've got some great listener questions, and feel free to send more in at any time. You know, even without us requesting it, because we continue to collect them and build them for episodes that we have available to everybody, and we also will be having, because we've talked about it, more and more content or some content popping up on Patreon as well. That might encompass some of this and more. We have some ideas for some behind the scenes stuff that's we hope will be fun and exciting to share with you, with our subscribers. But on our all our open platforms, whether it's audio on any of the audio platforms like Spotify or Apple Podcasts or Google, even was it Amazon? Did Jason get us on Amazon too? Was it? But,
possibly.
Yeah, but Spotify and Apple Podcasts and YouTube. Please take the time to subscribe on YouTube and any of these platforms, if you give us reviews and comments, positive reviews, that's much appreciated, because that helps us with the traction with the algorithms. So a big thank you to those that have done that or that do that regularly. It's noticed by us. We reply, and it's also very much appreciated. And as we've mentioned a couple times on this episode on YouTube, you can see what we're talking about on this as previous and future episodes. There'll be photos and video content on there as well. And thank you to our sponsors, pictureline.com and Canon USA. And gentlemen, it's always fantastic to see you and to catch up and to hear what's going on. And I wish we could be in person more often. I look forward to the next opportunity with that. In the meantime, I know you have trips coming up too, and there'll be another episode coming out for your listening or viewing enjoyment very soon. Until then, take care.
That's a wrap for another episode of Beyond the Wild podcast. We'd like to thank our sponsors, pictureline.com, your online source for everything photography, and Canon USA. Follow us on Instagram at Beyond the Wild Podcast, and make sure to check out our website at beyondthewildpodcast.com for additional show notes, information, and photographs for all of our episodes. You can watch our podcast on YouTube, where we'll include video and photo content, and subscribe. We welcome your comments, questions, and feedback on all of our social media platforms. We hope that you enjoyed this episode of Beyond the Wild podcast. Until next time, embrace adventure in the great outdoors with a camera in hand.